Teddy, welcome to the Profit and Grit Show. How you doing?
I'm good, Tyler. How you doing?
Good, man. I'm so happy to have you here. I want to learn about you as we're introducing you to the audience. What do you do professionally?
So currently I'm doing some coaching right now, some consulting in the home service business. So, dealing with different companies such as roofing. I'm doing plumbers. I have some, other environmental companies I consult with, basically anything in home service businesses.
Yeah, and you're like the blue collar man to me. Like when we say blue collar, like some of your businesses, I believe you've had five
Yep.
service businesses, like pretty hardcore oil type industries of some hardcore blue collar. Is that a fair statement?
It is. I mean, yeah, I come from that, third generation. I grew up in it, operating heavy equipment as a young boy, dealing with dirt and oil and, hazardous materials. I just grew up around that. So that's what I know.
That's very cool. What about something on a personal note? Anything you can share about yourself?
Yeah, so I have seven children, which shocks people.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, and we have a 4 month old, and our oldest is 15. So it's a wide range, but we come from a blended family, and there's seven kids. So
That's a lot of kids.
yep,
So, my partner many years ago, the business we were in, he was raising five kids, and I would hear all the stories
yep,
of, one's in baseball, one's in dance, one's in this. I
yes.
could only imagine seven. That's a whole nother level.
I have a 12 passenger Sprinter van. I call it the bus. That's how I get them around.
Wow, that must
Yeah.
be a lot of when you got a handful of kids in there. I imagine that's a pretty interesting ride.
Yes, it is
Yeah, that's funny.
for
Okay,
sure.
hey, I want to start out with what I call your rock bottom moment, and I'm going back to 2018, and you made one decision that some might say a bad decision. Can you
Yep.
talk about that and how that played out?
Yeah, absolutely. So going up to this point, I mean, I grew up, like I said, third generation. I grew up in a family business. I started a residential division with my father he was in environmental business for years, for 35 years, but he was doing commercial environmental work, not really much residential. So out of college, he's like, hey, do you want to start a residential division? So I said, sure. I got that up and going. That scaled pretty quickly. I had no experience of scaling companies at that point. I mean, I built the website, the logo just from scratch, and that scaled to seven figures within the first 12 months. And I ran that for 5 years. And unfortunately, it's very difficult working for family, as a lot of people listening might know. So we decided to part our ways back in 2009. I went off on my own. The same thing, started the same exact type of business, scaled that to seven figures very quickly. And unfortunately, if you scale any business from scratch and you're successful at it right away, as a young man, I was 28 years old. It got to my head, right? So I was like, I could do this with anything,
Yeah,
like
in your sleep.
exactly. I could do this in my sleep. Business is so simple. It's really not. I mean, so once I started going all these different directions, I started a hazmat spill response company, which did well. It did millions of dollars of revenue, year one. And, then I went into a door knocking business in the Bronx with a friend of mine from college. Then I went into real estate. I flipped 24 houses in 24 months. I mean, scaled like quick stuff. So, and I'm doing all this stuff simultaneously. And then I had an issue with the hazmat spill response company that I was running for about 5 years around 2018. And I had to shut it down. So that division was generating about 3 million in revenue. And I start to panic. So I'm like, I'm losing all that revenue. Even though the business wasn't profitable at this time, it's still money coming in, it's still cash
Sure.
flow, right? So it's still paying bills. So once I shut it down, I panicked. And my CFO at the time, who was in house, and he was like, listen, I have a connection with these guys out in Ohio. They are working around the fracking industry. They have contracts with publicly traded companies doing fracking. They want you to buy the trucks and just, they have all the guys to drive the trucks. All you got to do is rent a facility, get the equipment, and we have the contracts in place. So at this point, I've scaled so many companies bootstrapped with no personal guarantee, no loans or anything. But this in particular needed $1 million in equipment, and I didn't have $1 million in cash. So I was like, well, let me see what I can do. And I went out and I got approved off the balance sheet of my main company. They're like, yeah, you got a good company here. I'll give you the loan. So I did that. I got a personal guarantee on $1 million equipment. We got into the business right away, making money. I mean, 300 grand in revenue month. Number one, we were doing 300 grand in revenue. But the problem was it's 24/7. So the bills are coming in fast, faster than I could ever imagine. And I didn't have enough cash behind me to keep feeding the beast. Right. So I tried to go get loans. And as you know, brand new business, they're like, yeah, we're not going to loan you any money. So I turned to factoring, which you probably know it's not a good idea. Yeah, it's a bad idea. So I turned to them. And what I didn't understand about factoring at the time, and now I know, obviously, is they don't look at your credit, right? They look at your customer's credit because they're basically giving you money on the invoices. So,
Yeah.
and I'm figuring, well, they're publicly traded companies. They must have great credit. Well, long story short, they didn't have great credit, and I needed about 150 grand just to pay the bills every month, and they would only approve me for 50,000 a month, and I just couldn't come up with 100 grand a month to keep feeding the beast. And now looking back at it, because I've gone through it, there's other options I could entertain at the time, and I just didn't have it. I didn't know at that time. I wasn't reading books. I didn't educate myself about business. I didn't have a network of people that I have now, so I wind up just shutting it down, and they had come for everything. I mean, personal guarantee, they don't mess around, you know?
Wow. So hold on, because there's so much to unpackage here. Okay, first on factoring, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because nowadays they don't always call it factoring. They kind of have different terms for it.
Yes.
And I even forget the term. So you got to kind of keep your guard up if anybody's listening out there. Basically, you give an invoice, and we'll call it a bank, but a lot of
Yep.
times it's like some private company. You give them the invoice. The invoice hasn't been paid yet,
Yep.
and then that institution will give you a percentage of the money. The business might
Yes.
be like 30%. I'm sorry, might be 70%. It might be 80%. It just depends. The minute you get paid, that payment goes to them. Or
Correct.
in the olden days, which is probably even before your time, Teddy, what would happen is the customer would send you the check, the business, and it was your job to remit it back to the
Yes.
institution. Well, what would happen many years ago is sometimes you're cash starved and that check would get deposited into
Yep.
the business. And now you're double in the hole.
Yes.
You owe for
Yes.
the invoice and you got paid by the customer and you're out
Yep.
of cash. And so I will tell you this, Teddy, I have seen one scenario in my entire career where it worked.
Yeah.
And it was actually the one business that I went into, and it wasn't when I was at the business, it was before it. They used it in the first year. It was a staffing firm, and they had giant invoices that were on net 60, and they were paying labor, the consultants, to bill the client. And then they were paying the payroll, but they weren't getting the billings until later. And that allowed them to bridge the gap to growth
Yep.
where they had enough profit. But the margin of error is small because if something goes
Yeah.
wrong, you're dead, right? So my question was, what was and sorry for getting off on that tangent, but it's
No, it's okay.
passionate to me. What were your big learning lessons from that failure? Like if you had to do a do-over, what would you have not have done and what would you do differently?
So for me, I mean, not knowing where to turn, right? So I could have brought in equity partners. I had the contracts. I mean, I had amazing contracts with these publicly traded companies. I had the equipment. I had the manpower. I had the facility I rented for the year. I mean, I had everything aligned. If I would have had a network of people that I could have turned to, I probably could have brought an equity partner and say, "Hey, I'll give you 50%. Just be the cash partner in this deal. I just need 150 grand a month and to keep the beast going." I had the money coming in. So there's things I could have done. But at that point in my career in business, I did everything through hustle and grit, and I did, with the show Profit and Grit, it was hustle and grit at the time. I didn't know anything about business except for just what I was taught, from my father, who was super old school. And he did it. He started out with zero too and grew the business he grew. And when I crashed and burned, everything crashed and burned, I started reading, right? And that's where I started learning a lot of things. And that's where I start thinking like, damn, I could have did this different. I could have did that different. So educating yourself about business, and it doesn't take much, listening to podcasts like this, reading books about different, avenues of business, whether that's marketing, operations, sales, and you can learn so much because they just don't teach in college. I went to college and I didn't learn anything about how to run a business in college. I just didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Teddy, one thing though, I do agree with you. Like you did great. You had multiple businesses. Now you're in a great situation with this next business. Was it all just about not having the experience, or do you think part of it was ego too? Because it sounds like you things
Yes.
came to you pretty quickly. You're obviously really good at what you do. So do you think ego played into that?
100%. Like I said before, I mean, at 28 years old, I generated 1.3 million in revenue within like 12 months, like from scratch. That can get to your head,
Sure.
and especially when you've never done it before, it's like, holy shit. And then you do it again a second time. So it really got to my head. So absolutely ego. And sometimes you just need to get ego checked in life. I mean,
Yeah.
and it really what it did for me after 2018 is when I went back to my main business, the residential tank services, and we revamped and restarted SimpleTank services. I mean, we had no debt. Took no loans. We very slowly and methodically grew that business to the point where we looked and dialed in every single number. I mean, I owed nobody any money. The vendors were paid ahead of time to save percentages off. I mean, we did everything, I believe, the right way. And it was a whole different type of way of running business where before that time, I would take a loan for anything. If you would give me a loan and I could grow, I'll give you the loan. Let's go. Let's
Sure.
go. It was just
Sure.
grow, grow, grow. And as you know, you could get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then one other thing before I wrap up this segment, I want to go back to a comment that you made made. You had a business with your family and it
Yep.
didn't work. I think there's a learning lesson in there because a lot of home service businesses are family.
Yeah.
You have a son, you'll have your mother doing the office work or
Yes.
whatever. So there's a lot of family. What was your takeaway from that falling out in your family event? Did that spill into your personal relationships with your
Yeah.
family? Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So when I started that division inside my father's business, at that time, my mother was involved in the business as well. She did all the bookkeeping. She had done that for my father his whole life. So my mother helped me, with the bookkeeping aspect of it. And we just, what I did is I started very slowly. Same thing. Like I didn't have guys or anything like that, but my father would let me use his guys. And I went out and I did the marketing and I got the phone to ring. And very slowly we grew that. And we stashed some profit away and we started investing into equipment. So we did it very methodically. And that's how I learned how to kind of bootstrap, essentially. It was my first kind of foray into bootstrapping a business. And unfortunately, my mother passed away in 2008 of cancer.
Sorry.
And
Sorry.
yeah, it was a tough time for the family. And she was a big part of the family business and things kind of just start to go sideways. My father wound up leaving the business. He had to deal with he had to deal with the passing and everything like that. And then he came back after being gone for a year. And then me and him just went at it because it was like, hey, I've been here for a year. You left and I got this thing brought, it's humming right now. And then it was just like, two masculine, we're just two type A personalities like going at it, like, and he's very old school and I'm more new school. Where again, at the time, I'm like, leverage everything. Let's grow a top line revenue. That's all I cared about. My father's like, slow down. You know what I mean? Like, so I probably should have listened to my father at the time, right? I mean, absolutely. That was a lesson that I took. I should have listened to him a little bit more on that front. And yeah, it's just really difficult working for family because then, yeah, it does spill into personal. Unfortunately, him and I didn't speak for almost 4 years after that breakup there. But now we're best friends. We are closer than we ever were, and we talk almost every morning. So we have a great relationship.
Yeah. One thing I want to share with you because I can relate to you. So I lost my dad last year,
Oh, sorry to
and
hear that.
when I
Yeah.
lost him, it kind of changed the family dynamics a little bit.
Yes.
And then literally 2 weeks ago, I lost my mother. She was
Oh,
88. She was
man.
older, but it's funny how, you have family members, and in your case, maybe your mom, they're kind of the fabric of keeping the
Yes.
family
Yeah.
together, the siblings and everyone. And
Yep.
I'm going through that phase right now where over the last couple of years, things have really dramatically changed in terms of, you just always go to mom's, for example, for
Yes.
Christmas, and that doesn't happen anymore. And it's just keeping that all together. So sorry to hear about your loss. I'm kind of in the same
Yeah. I'm sorry to
situation, at
hear that
least.
too,
Yeah. Yeah.
man.
Anyway,
It's never good.
it never is. It's hard, but it just, gets to be time in life. Sometimes, unfortunately,
Yep.
things like this happen. Okay. So I want to go over now to the turning point. So we talked about the rock bottom.
Yep.
And I'm talking mostly about launching Simple Tank services. You went into like a fixed pricing model,
Yes.
and that industry is generally known as being a shady industry.
Yep.
So talk to me about how did that become a differentiator? What moves were you making where you were like, man, this is a turning point that's really taking off?
Yeah. So for that business specifically, I wound up partnering with somebody who was in the industry. He had been in the industry for almost 35 years. But again, old school mentality. He never really grew beyond like, I think 400,000 or 500,000 top line revenue at the time. And my previous business, which was the same exact business, Qualified Tank Services. I mean, we topped out at like 2.5, 3 million. So I was used to getting, decent amount of revenue in that industry. Anyways, again, it's very intricate business. So in that business, unfortunately, like you said, there's a lot of shady characters. The way that they do the pricing forever since I mean, I've been in it since 2000. My father was in it for years before that, but mainly commercial. But the way it works is this. So you're dealing with underground oil tanks. Everything's underground. So there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how big your tank is.
Right.
We don't know. And there's no records on town of these tanks are put in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. The townships don't have records. So there's a lot of unknown stuff that you're dealing with. And then once you open it up and you remove the tanks, a lot of times there are environmental impacts into the ground. And again, we don't know how far the contamination traveled. That's like the whole story they tell, which is true. It is the God's honest truth. You don't know how far the contamination has traveled, but most of the contractors would lean on that and they would tell a customer, hey, yeah, I'll do this for, 8 grand, starts at 8 grand. I don't know what it's going to be at the end of the job, but it's going to start at 8. So now you got a homeowner who's signing off on a blank check, essentially like, let me give this guy 8 grand, just trust that maybe it's going to fall around 10, 12 grand. But sometimes they'd come back at 40, 50, 80, 100 plus $1,000 to do a cleanup. So you start at 8 and it could go into six figures within 3 days. I mean, I'm talking 3 days. I could give you a bill for
Wow.
100 grand. I mean, it's crazy how it
Wow.
worked. So customers didn't like that, obviously. Who would
Yeah.
like that, right? And I knew what my customers' pain points were, and they would always tell me, "Can't you just give me a price? Can't you give me a price?" So in the commercial environmental industry, they have what's called a geoprobe, and they go out there and they do what's called a soil investigation, and it's called a delineation. And they would charge upwards of $4,500 to investigate a property. So hypothetically, if you're going to buy a commercial property in New Jersey, anyways, you have to do this investigative work, and it's about $4,500. Well, no homeowner is going to spend $4,500 on doing this work ahead of time. But what I did is I went out and bought the equipment, and I invested in the equipment, and then I trained my guys, and I basically cut all the services that are required to do that, except for the actual investigative work. So I didn't include any sampling, I didn't include any reporting, like all the stuff that added up to 4,500. And I said, I'll do this for $600. I just came down to like what my true cost was. I'm like, it's basically a cost driver for me, just to cover my costs, but now I could give you a fixed price. So now for me, it was like, hey, I could go in there and I could drill around and I could tell the customer, hey, this is going to be $17,500. And that's it. No matter what. If my investigation is wrong, you're still going to pay 17.5. If it's right, and maybe I have a little bit of insurance factor in there where it's a little bit padded, then I do well, right? And sometimes I did really well, and sometimes I didn't. But overall, when you ran the numbers, it worked out. So it was amazing. Nobody else in the industry was offering it, so the customers couldn't price shop me. They would come and be like, well, I'm going to go price this around. I'm like, no one else is offering this. So good luck. If you want a
Yeah.
fixed price, I would give them the option. If you don't want a fixed price, we could go open ended too, but then you take all the risk and the liability where I'm taking all the risk and liability on this fixed price item. And the customers loved it. They absolutely loved it. And it was very profitable for me.
How much were you qualifying? Because to me, it's like $600 for a lead.
Yep.
That's your cost of acquisition. How much were you qualifying them, or what were you doing? Was it anybody that expressed interest? You'd go and do that, or did you kind of? Was there certain criteria that you had before you invest $600, basically?
Yeah, so they'd have to sign the contract, and for the $600 investigation, and we go out there,
Okay.
and bring that equipment out there. We would drill down and do the investigation, and then I'd give them the price. And sometimes they didn't sign on, but at least the 600 covered my cost to do that
Yeah, so you were break
investigation.
even. Got it. Got
Yeah,
it. Okay. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
But the
Okay.
other thing, so that was for the remediation aspect of the business. The other thing that I changed was the tank removals was what increased my closing cost, my closing percentage. So, for example, again, it was open ended. So they call, I have a 550-gallon tank. Okay, where is it? It's on my front lawn. Again, it's like, all right, well, it starts at 1,200, and then these line items that go up depending on permits, disposal costs, access issues, blah 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 blah. And then before you know it, it's $2,500 to pull your tank. So I went out there and I looked. What I did is I ran all the numbers. You'll like this CFO guy, right? I ran all the numbers and I literally put them in an Excel sheet. And I'm like, all right, so over the last 120 days, I looked at how many additional line items we charge for, and I came up with an average price. I said, on average, we're charging customers about 200. So let's just throw it in there. So I'm going to make flat rate $1,400, and boom, my closing percentage went from like 45% to 75% because the customers were like, same thing. They couldn't price shop me. They're like, nobody else is offering flat rate. I'm like, exactly. Hire us. It's one price. I'll include the permits. I include everything. I mean, it blew my competitors' minds. They're like, you're going to lose your shirt. You can't do this. I'm like, lose my shirt. My closing percentage went up 30%. I'm like, do the math on the average ticket. I'm like, the amount of revenue I'm driving in this place right now, it was insane what I did, right? So, and my competitors hate it now. They all have something similar, that they're
Sure,
doing.
sure.
Yeah.
So, what's the learning lesson here? Because my takeaway is you were okay, and this is hard sometimes. I think I see this in my own practice with owners, is to accept that some deals aren't always going to go your way.
Yep.
But if you can look at all of the deals in
Overall,
aggregate, you're going to
yes.
be fine. But I think a lot of times the one deal eats them up of the loss more than the 20 that are positive. How
Yes.
did you deal with that, or is that just how you're in your DNA?
Well, so it's funny because I told you my partner was old school, right? So he was an older
Yeah,
guy, gentleman. He's been in the business
yeah.
for 35 years. When I tell you he fought me tooth and nail every way with every contract, he's like, oh, we could have got an extra $200 for that. It's under concrete. I'm like, an extra 200. I brought in $35,000 in revenue last month. You know how much extra $200 we'd have to charge to get to that 35 grand? But after I showed him the numbers, I mean, he was an accountant too by trade, before he got into the environmental business. And I mean, it took me months, but then I showed him like, I mean, we literally went at the time, I think we were at like 2 million in revenue, and almost overnight we were at $4 million, like within 12 months. We doubled the revenue. So he saw it and he's like, all right, he stopped complaining. But yeah, he gave me a hard time. He did not want to do it because he had that problem. Like you said, he's like, I can't comprehend it. And I learned this from reading. I don't know what book I read, but somebody's like, flat rate pricing, you learn about this, your closing percentage, your customer acquisition costs. You start learning about all these things. You're like, holy shit, now you can start tweaking your business like this. And it's like, you start thinking like, wow, how can I improve these numbers? And that's what I did. I started really dialing in on the profit because the profit is what drives the value of the business. And ultimately, that's what we were doing. We were growing the business to sell it. So I wanted to really just hammer down on the profitability of the business.
So my number one lesson here would be, because you said it so well, is if someone's having trouble getting comfortable about a flat fee pricing, I'd say the number one thing, and you said it, is look at the data. Have someone
Yes.
create data for you and show you the different scenarios, and the numbers don't lie.
Yes, 100%. It's all data driven. And all the decisions I made were all data driven. I literally would not make a decision unless I had some kind of data to back it up. And then I needed to prove to my partner at the time, like, listen, look at this, look at these numbers. And then he would say, all right. But yet, if you're just throwing stuff at the wall and you don't have the data to back it up, it becomes hard to make those decisions because, you will lose money on this job maybe. But again, overall, you look at it at the end, you're like, oh, all right. I mean, my seller's discretionary earnings or EBITDA, whatever you want to call it, was 43% of revenue. I mean, that's unheard of in
Wow.
home services.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, and I wasn't involved in the day to day. Like I was literally out of the day. I mean, it was crazy what I was able to accomplish in like a 36-month period.
Because you answered one of my questions. I can tell you're very revenue driven. I think that probably feeds you a little bit, like
Yep.
that excites you. The problem is, we all know that saying, top line is vanity, revenue is
Yes.
sanity,
Yep.
or I mean, sorry, top line is sanity, bottom line is sanity. I'm saying that, I'm totally botching
Yes.
that, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
And so we tend to not look at the bottom line, but you just said 43%, which is insane,
Yep.
bottom line. When you first started that flat fee pricing, did you have some loss? Like, what if like the first one was a loss? Would you maybe have been like, "Hey, I'm not sure if this works," or did you have some bad data when it first started out and you just stuck with it, or how did that play out initially?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a book. It's coming out in September, hopefully on Amazon. It's called Profit Driven Growth, and it's
Nice.
literally just about, profit, and that's the main thing you should be focusing on. Because yes, I was that guy that chased revenue, top line, top line, top line. But I have clients right now. I have a guy that's doing almost 60 million in top line revenue, and he can't take a paycheck out of his business. So I don't care about top line. I care about profit, and I really want to dial in on the profits. But yes, what I did for me is I said I need a 90-day plan. I want to see this over a 90-day period, and then I'm going to look back at the data. So I'm not going to look at one-off jobs, right? So, and that's what my partner was doing. He'd go and be like, "Well, we could have got $300 for the permit. The town charges $300. So we actually did this job for like $900." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Let's look at it in 90 days." And then we did, and because my closing percentage went up. So in the tank business, yes, you're in the oil tank business, right? So we had to remove oil tanks, but that's not what we were there to do. Our real business was environmental cleanups. That's where the jobs were. That's where the profit is. So the tank removals were like loss leaders, right? You're doing them just so you could find more tanks that are leaking so you could have those cleanups, right? And I hate to say it because you don't want anybody's tank to leak. It's a homeowner. You don't want them to have to pay for that, but that's where the money is in the business. The money is not in pulling oil tanks. The money is in the cleanups. So you want to, in order to find those cleanups, you have to pull more tanks. Well, how do you pull more tanks? You increase your closing call, your closing percentage. And that's what I did. So we went from 45% to 75%. So if I was sending out 100 proposals a month at an average ticket of $3,000, I mean, you start doing the math on that. I mean, it quickly, your revenue goes through the roof.
Yeah, but that's gold. I don't want to gloss over that. Because we're all guilty of this. We tend to look at result by result when we first start something,
Yes.
the first few, and we make decisions based off that. You had the presence of mind to go, no, I'm going to look at a fair population of time, 90
Yep.
days in this case, and then I'm going to evaluate and either pivot, change, tweak, whatever it takes, but I'm going to make my decision off a good amount of data.
Yes, 100%. You have to. And then I do
Yeah.
that even now today. I mean, any kind of decision I make inside of a business, I always say, let's run it for 90 days or 30 days, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Whether that's proposals. I mean, I tweak the proposals, I mean, down to the wording of the proposals. And then I'd run A/B tests on the proposals. And I'd say, all right, well, let's run these for 30 days. Let's see what has a better closing percentage. Because I get obsessed with all these little numbers. And I'm like, proposal A closed at 75. This one closed at 65. Well, let's scrap that one. We're only going with proposal A. So yeah, I do that with every decision I make now in business. And I never did
But
that
we're
before.
but we're so emotional that, myself included, and the people, I'm sure a lot of people out in the audience, because I interact with a lot of business owners like this. We're very emotional. We're very
Yes.
just like the guy, the your partner that you had. We
Yes.
look at one by one and we forget that we need to evaluate, or we don't know maybe even that we have to look at a population of data before we really make a decision. So I love that. That's gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good
No,
stuff.
it's helped me a lot in business is to go and really dial in on the data. Yeah, without it, you can't. I mean, I did it for years, so I know what it's like doing without it. And now that I'm obsessed with it, it makes a massive difference.
You're like a covert finance person, I think. I think you're a finance person in hiding.
Yes, yeah, I get that a lot, man. I became obsessed with the numbers. When I started reading about building businesses for value purposes, I really became obsessed with how do I increase the profits and playing these little, like I call them like games. It's like a little game to me. It's like, all right, if I tweak this proposal, if I do a price here and I change this pricing, I mean, I came up with all kinds of stuff. Like we gave out guaranteed soil tests, which no one in the industry was doing. There was no expense associated with it unless I got like so we go out and soil test your tank, and I would say, hey, for $1,400 additional, I'll guarantee that if you pull it with my company, so now I got the removal guaranteed, which is another 1,400. I'm like, if you pull with us and there's a leak, I'll clean it up for free. Nobody was like, what? They're like, well, you can't do that. But again, I would pull 20 of them and maybe one of them would be a minor leak. And I again run the numbers. Okay. So I sold 20 of them at $1,400 a pop. The minor leak cost me 3 grand at my cost, so it was worth it. It made sense. So I
You
started playing all those games.
seem to me you're pretty creative too. So you could not only do you have a finance background, it's pretty finance ability. It's pretty unusual for your creativity in terms of how you price things. Have you had some ideas that haven't panned out where you would have said you start to do it and you're like, I can tell this is going way in the wrong direction?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, always you can't. You're not gonna have 100% win rate, right? So we try to launch a real insurance product where we would charge monthly because again, learning about value, I'm like, oh, recurring revenue. I need to put recurring revenue in my business. So I'm like, let's do a thing where we charge the customers like $59 a month, but it would shore their tank. So if they had an active oil tank and they didn't want to sell it and they were still putting oil in it, which some houses are, right? Because they don't have access to gas, so they're still using the tank. So I would go out there and I would try to pitch him on it. And we sold a couple of them, but I could never get it to scale really because in order to really grow that, you had to partner with the oil providers
Hmm.
and those guys, because there are competitors that do that, but you needed a lot of money to get it off the ground because you had to get in bed with a real insurance company and I couldn't do it in house. So that just kind of whizzled off. We didn't
Yeah.
really push it.
Yeah, I love though that your creativity. I mean, it sounds like you really immersed yourself in the business, the numbers of the business, and thought of all these crazy ways. And I don't want to say crazy ways, I shouldn't
Yeah,
say
it's a
that,
pain
but
points, creative. Yeah,
yeah, that you could evolve the business.
well, that's exactly it. I mean, and that's what I tell a lot of my clients, like, let's think outside the box. Like, think about the pain points of your customers, right? What kind of pain points are they going through? How can you solve those pain points? And now you can charge for that. And it's not taking advantage because you are solving a problem that they have, and no one else is, especially if no one in the industry is offering it. It's like mind blowing what happens because it's so easy to sign them on because they're like, oh, no one else is offering this, you
Yeah.
know?
And what kind of breaks my heart a little bit, occasionally I have someone come to me that, let's say they're running a flooring business or whatever, and they'll come to me and we'll talk about what's your strategy in terms of your marketing, how are you doing things, how are you presenting your services. And I've had people say to me, well, I just do flooring, dude. It's all the same. Like everybody does the same thing. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
just flooring. And I'm like, wait. And
yeah.
then you get in this whole discussion where no, there's differentiators here. And but
Yes,
people don't always just intuitively see it. I think because we get so close to things
of
of
course.
having doing the same thing, we have optics that just don't see the big picture.
Yes, 100%. That can
Do,
happen for
do
sure.
you see that sometimes with business owners?
Oh yeah, all the
Yeah,
time, all the
yeah,
time, and even trying to pull it out of them. I feel like I had to pull it out of them. Like, no, come on, let's think together here. Let's really think about it. And yeah, it could be difficult. You get, especially the guys that've been around for a long time. Those are the
yeah,
ones that are hardest because, and I don't blame them, right? They've been in business for 30 years. They're doing it one way, and they've been successful. So trying to get them to change. I have a client right now that they want to sell, and I'm preparing them. I'm like, listen, this is what we need to do if you want to grow the value, and they're just like having a hard time with it all. So. Um, it can be difficult sometimes.
yeah. It's interesting. Hey, I want to switch gears here into the next segment. So I'll give this up to your choice, but what's either the best or the worst advice that you've seen in this industry, whether you've gotten it personally or you just see it?
And when you say this industry,
Oh,
you
sorry.
mean
Home
like a
services, blue
home services?
collar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the best advice by far, and I tell this to all my clients, and this is one of the things that I didn't do initially, and then once I did it, it became very successful very quickly. Is focus. It's one word. It's focus. I mean, and when I say focus, I mean I'm talking like hyper focus. Like there's so many companies I talk to now, contractors that are like, well, I offer this service and I do this too, and this too, and this too. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, you can't be good at all that stuff. Like, there's just not possible. And when you really understand processes and systems and processes, and you start breaking down, it's different and it's unique for every service that you're providing. So now you have multiple different, it just complicates things. And when you hyper focus on one thing, like I did with SimpleTank, and I didn't do anything else. I mean, I literally was just, I mean, I turned everything else off. It was just that business is when I was really able to scale it properly and build the value so quickly.
So how do you do that? I mean, just from a practical standpoint, it worked for you, but the shiny object syndrome
Yes,
is
it's,
more than ever because of AI. And
yes, it's
should I
so hard.
have, should I have AI attendant? Should I have this AI? Should I have that? How do you do it? Like, what would be your advice?
So, I mean, again, for me, it's like when you start breaking it down by systems, and when you're used to putting systems in place, which again, I never did that for the first 15 years. But then when I started educating myself, I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. Okay. But when you start working on systems and you realize how complicated it is to like put systems together that are repeatable, that you can hand off to someone else, um, you're not going to want to have, all these different, you're going to start looking at things like, okay, well, this is really like, let's focus on these systems. So we can hand them off to somebody. And then, it's just, to be good at one thing, most companies are not doing that. So you're going to stand out, right? So like I hyper focused. I actually got rid of a service. So we offered for the longest time, we did what's called tank searches, right? So
Mhm.
companies or realtors and buyers would call us and say, hey, we're not sure. I'm buying this house, but I'm not sure it has an oil tank. And you come out and do a sweep, and we would charge $250 for that service. So now we're dealing with the buyer, the realtor, the buyer's realtor, the seller's realtor, sometimes the attorneys, sometimes the buyer, the seller. I mean, we were dealing with 6 or 7 people that were calling in our office constantly. Where are you? When's my report coming? Blah, blah, for $250. So when I started SimpleTank, we launched that. I was like, we're getting rid of that service. And my partner's like, we can't get rid of that. I've been doing this for 35 years. We bring in 200 grand in revenue off that. I was like, yeah. And we get nothing. We don't get work out of it because we're dealing with the buyer. And once we find a oil tank, the seller's like, I'm going to hire my own guy. I'm not hiring your guy. You know how that goes. So we would not get the big work. So I'm like, for $250, I'm like, if we hyper focus on tank removals and soil remediations and incorporate soil testing, which will find us more leakers, that's what we did. We hyper focus our marketing, all our efforts went into that. And we became the experts at tank removals, soil test, and soil remediations, 3 services. And we scaled it. Like I said, we were at 1.6 million in profit in the first, like, I think 18 months.
Wow. So I was about to say it probably took you a certain amount of time to be able to target what you want to focus on and what you don't want to focus on. But 18 months is not a lot of
No, it
time
was
for
it was
that
quick.
level of growth.
But you have to remember, I was in the industry for since 2005
Fair
full
enough.
time.
Okay.
So I was
Fair
in
enough.
it at that point. So it wasn't like it was a brand new industry for me. So I kind of already knew where to hyper focus on. And again, reading all the books, I'm like, all right, I got to really dial it and finding that service that's the most some people don't even think like this. Like, what is out of, let's say you're offering 6 services, which one is the most profit? Which one has the highest profit margin? Well, why don't we concentrate on finding more of those, right? And let's get rid of the low profit margin services so you have more time to deal with the higher profit margin jobs, because that's going to open you up for giving better customer service. And if you're giving better customer service, you're going to get more reviews. If you get more reviews, you get more customers. And it's just a flywheel, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And it worked really well.
Good stuff. How about before we wrap up the segment, anything come to mind that kind of falls in the bad advice or the worst advice category for once again, like home service businesses or just blue collar trades in general?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely revenue. Okay. Everybody talks, that's all they talk about. Oh, I did 10 million. I did 20 million. Like I said, I have a client right now who's doing 60 million. He can't take a paycheck. So revenue
Wow.
is not the target. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's scary. I mean, I have a lot of clients that are even 8 million, 10 million, and they're not even bringing home a half of the revenue or the profits that I was bringing home. And I was only at 4 million top line. So profit is where you need to concentrate on. Again, concentrating on profit, the profit drivers, what services are the highest profit margins, and really dialing that in. It doesn't matter how much revenue you bring in. I know it sounds great, it sounds sexy. Yeah, I brought in 30 million, but if you're not making any money, what's the point? This is not charity. We're not running charities here. We're
Right.
here. This is
Right.
for profit businesses. Why are we not talking about profit? And that's what I think every company should be talking about.
What would you say when someone comes to you? Because I see some very similar to what you're saying. Someone comes to you, $8 million a year business and owner's taking a nominal salary. True story. Had someone come to me about 2 months ago, 2 guys, partners, doing 6 million. You know what their W-2 was? And they're taking no distributions, 85K a year.
Oh my God. That's what I'm
It's
talking
like,
about.
dude,
This is what
like,
I mean.
why
Well,
would I even do
yes.
that? Like, I mean,
No. Go get a
and
job at that
so
point. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
even if you are only working 20 hours a week, maybe you're tanking a little bit. It's still not worth
Yeah.
even the headache, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, what's the first thing you look at when you hear a scenario like that? All right, is it all about raising pricing? Is it about cutting expenses? Where does it fall in for you?
So a lot of times it's pricing. That's what I see with a lot of my clients. It's they're just not pricing right. Like they don't understand gross profit. They don't understand what their overhead is and what their target should be. So yeah, they think they need to be competitive. So they're dropping the prices to get the jobs. But I'm like, okay, yeah, you keeping your guys busy, but you're not making any money. I mean, I just sat with a client. I'm like, yeah, you did, like you said, around 6 million. I'm like, you did all this money, but you're less than like 5% in profit when you really look at everything. What are you doing? I wouldn't even get out of bed for this money. And yeah, so it's pricing is a lot, but it's not just, hey, raise your prices. It's not
Right.
always that. A lot of times it's your processes, right? And streamlining certain things. I had a client, same size revenue, and they had a full-time bookkeeper in there and they were paying them a lot of money. It was like 75,000. And they were like, well, my booker's been with me for 15 years. What do I do? I'm like, okay, well, let me sit with the bookkeeper and let me see what they're doing every day. I want to know exactly. I mean, literally, I'll break down by 15-minute increments what you're doing, and then I'll see if this she's worth the money. And it wasn't. I mean, what she was doing, I'm like, okay, we could outsource this, we could do this, we could have this person do this part of it. And now we just, and I hate to say it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
people say, oh, you're firing people. But listen, at the end of the day, this is business, right?
Right.
We're
Right.
in business to make money. If the
Right.
business goes down, everybody loses their job.
Everybody's out. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can't just look at it like, oh, you just want to fire everybody. No, it's not about that. It's about streamlining the processes, making the business profitable so everybody can continue to have a job, or the majority of the people can continue to have a job, you know?
Right. One thing I hear commonly, I'd love to know your opinion on this. So, someone will come to me, and part of the reason their profits are so poor is they're working with a type of business segment. So, let's say property managers and HVAC or commercial business, and it's generally known to be low margin
Yep.
type business. And really, the solution probably is to be more in a higher return business like residential.
Yes.
How would you deal with, like, what are your thoughts around changing business mix and how do
Yep.
you handle that type of conversation?
Well, I have a client right now that's literally going through this, and we reworked. They do public bid work, right? So, as you know, with public bid work, you got to be real tight on your bids because otherwise you won't win the work, right? So, and
Yeah.
he was getting a lot of work, but he wasn't profitable. And I said, listen, at the end of the day, and they have four divisions inside their company, and I said, okay, at the end of the day, here's the target you have to shoot for. If you can't win bids at this money, like at this profit target, like you have to decide because you have three other very profitable divisions, and you're taking money out of the three profitable divisions to feed this division that's losing money. It doesn't make any sense. So here's the new target, and that's what they did. They started putting out the bids, and they lost the first one, but then they got the second, the third one, and now they're starting to come back, and it's starting to do really well. But it was crazy because the guy that I sat with, he was the estimator for this business. And now you would think he's the estimator, right? He's working with numbers all day long. I asked him to show me what the profits were. He came and he showed me the gross profits. I'm like, it didn't have overhead. I'm like, do you know this is gross profit, right? Do you know the difference between gross profit and net profit? He was like, well, I just thought that's what the company keeps. I'm like, yeah, it keeps that, but then it's got to pay all the bills. I'm like, so that's not what's left over. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so I deal with that all the time. And yeah, sometimes it makes sense to just cut it loose if you have to and go in the direction where the highest profit margins are, you know?
Yeah, that's good feedback. That's great. Okay, as usual, I'm not doing a great job of managing time, and I've got
That's
my
okay.
favorite topic I want to be sure to cover. Let's talk a little bit about, like, your blueprint is what I call it, in terms of we've talked a little bit about numbers, but in terms of KPIs, dashboards, things that would keep the team and the company aligned. What are you looking at, and what do you feel are the most critical things that? And I realize this might vary between companies and industries, but generally speaking.
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, in my last business, the main things that we looked at is we looked at, how many estimates were we giving, how many phone calls, we start with that. So how many phone calls were coming in, how many leads were coming in, out of those leads, how many were turning into proposals, out of those proposals, how many were closing. So our closing percentage, the closing percentage is very important because you want to tweak that. If it's not a good closing percentage, you want to work on your sales process to increase that. So closing percentage is huge. Your customer acquisition cost is really big. You want to know what it costs to acquire a customer, because if you know your customer acquisition cost, now you can figure out ways where you could acquire customers for maybe cheaper, through maybe referral partners. There's a lot of different ways you could, acquire a customer. So, yeah, I mean, the profit margins, obviously, you're looking at profit margins. But as far as like marketing goes, it's those things essentially: leads and closing percentage and customer acquisition cost.
Do you have a dollar amount of, or not dollar amount, I'm sorry, percentage of your marketing budget as a percentage of revenue that generally businesses should be in?
Yeah, so and this varies. Now,
Sure.
the way I did my marketing, so marketing is one of the things I really love. So I call myself like a general contractor of marketing because I can go and find I call them the killers, that they're like, specialists in what they do. Like I had one guy for on-page SEO, one guy for off-page SEO, one guy for my backlinks, and I hired all these freelancers essentially. I mean, I had probably 20 guys working on my marketing department, but they were all outsourced, and I managed those teams. So what my marketing spend when we were growing from year over year 100%, I was at 3% of revenue, which is very unheard of. But
Wow.
again, this goes back to the 43%, EBITDA. I was able to keep that profit margin really high. Typically, though, most companies that are hiring, they're outsourcing to companies that are doing their marketing and doing their SEO and stuff like that. Anywhere between 5 to 10%, depending on how much they want to grow, is usually a good number that I like to see.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, that's pretty common. 3% considering your
It's
bottom
very
line is
low.
pretty amazing. Yeah, that's
Yes.
crazy,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
You're doing a heck of a job closing, and your cost of acquisition must have been like nothing practically.
Yes, it was very low. I mean, our cost of acquisition was very low. I mean, our average ticket was 3,000. I think our cost of acquisition was about $50. And but I did a lot of things that were outside of the norm. I mean, I had a podcast in the oil tank industry, which who the hell has a podcast in the oil tank industry, right? So I had that. I had a YouTube channel that I scaled that drove. I mean, the customers were like, I learned so much from your YouTube channel that I don't care. I want to hire the guy with the beard. They would tell me, it was me at the time, and I'm like, all right, yeah, let's go. And my closing percentage went through the roof. So a lot of things like that, which helped.
Which, oh, by the way, there's your branding of the guy with the beard.
Yes.
Whether that was organically happening or not, that's cool that people
Yes.
recognize you that way. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
okay, I think we've talked good about, I think we've covered a fair ground on the numbers. I want to go into the last thing, and that's just kind of like the next summit, I call it. Like, where are you going? What are your next steps? What's big for you and happening on the horizon?
Yeah, so I've been doing some coaching and consulting, like I said, since I sold my business, and I like it. I mean, I do. I really do like it. I like helping other people, but my passion is what I've really found in the last couple of months here is I really get like excited to grow something from nothing, right? So taking something from zero and seeing it like a baby just grow, and so I'm actually entertaining. Well, I really did pull the trigger this week, actually, just this week, where I am starting a residential roofing business in New Jersey. So I see a major opportunity in the roofing space. I'm really interested in this space because of the way that it operates. I have a lot to learn, obviously, because I don't come from that industry, but I've done some consulting in the space, and now I'm starting to learn. And I'm bringing on coaches. I'm bringing on people that are going to help me through that the industry knowledge aspect of it. But as far as the business aspect, the marketing, the operation, the sales, I feel like I bring a lot to the table in this space. And yeah, I'm looking to partner with companies. That's what I did in my last business too. I did a mini roll up in the tank business. So I'll be looking to do that as well. And with some of the smaller guys in the roofing space to kind of just take it and grow and see where it goes.
So you envision kind of acquiring some small roofers, so to speak. Would that be to acquire talent that way, or would it be what would be the reasoning behind it?
Exactly. Yep. It's acquiring talent, it's
Okay.
acquiring, phone numbers that, people like a lot of times I just sat with a guy who's doing 5.5 million top line. He does zero marketing, zero. He just has it.
Wow.
He's been doing it forever and it's all referral based. So for a guy like me, where I'm coming in, I'm doing all PPC, LSA, and Google business page, optimization. I'm doing all that stuff, right? YouTube. I bring a guy like that on my team. Now it's like fireworks because I got the referral work coming in, plus I got the digital marketing aspect working together. And it's like, boom, we go to the next level really fast.
When you look at projections or some type of forecasting, what do you anticipate in terms of like your first year? Do you already have like do you think you'll be a seven-figure company in your first year, or how do you model that out in terms of expectation?
I mean, the way it's back of the napkin math for me,
Okay.
essentially, average ticket in the roofing business in New Jersey is about 20,000. So, even with one crew, with one project manager, I could probably do anywhere between 3.6 to 4 million in the first year. Is kind of what
Wow.
I'm projecting. Yeah.
That's crazy. And
So,
you're obviously coming from a standpoint now where you've had several successful businesses. I imagine you probably have a little bit of capital, so you can invest. I would
yes.
think
Yep.
you're able to shorten the curve a little bit here, even be just because you are in a stronger position than maybe other times that you've started businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Every time I've started a business before, I mean, the first business I started after I left my family business, I had $8,000 in my pocket. I mean, that's what I had to my name because I was 28 years old. I wasn't making a lot of money at the time, but I was, a young kid. So I spent it on everything, cars, houses, women, everything. nothing, 20 years old and you're making decent money. That's what you tend to do. But now, yeah, I'm in a different financial position, but I am going to still take that same mindset of bootstrapping because, I'm not just going to dump a couple hundred grand into an account and say, yeah, let's run with this. So I'm going to start slow. I'm actually going to be recording a lot of it on my YouTube channel, documenting the process of, doing this bootstrapping in the residential roofing business. So it should be fun. I'm going to have a videographer full time from day one. That's one of the things I'm bringing on board. But yeah, I'm doing professional branding right off the rip. I'm going to spend some money there and, yeah, I'm going to do it right, right out the gate this
Yeah,
time,
you're investing. Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Is this documentary, would you envision that'll be part of Teddy's Slack YouTube or is that a
Yes.
new
Yeah.
channel? Okay,
Yeah,
very
it'll be
cool.
under my personal account, and then I'll start a separate account for the actual roofing business where I'll do more like educational content
Sure.
for the homeowners.
To drive lead generation,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, got it. Awesome. What about BizScore.ai? Is that got a life or where does that sit in your
Yeah,
product line?
so it's a tool that I created it helps with my current clients. So if I have a client, I sit with them, I go through their P&L, I go through their balance sheet, and essentially what it does, it just analyzes their business from financial standpoint, but also on how involved they are in the day to day, and it gives them a grade, right? That's how it works. So it'll give them a grade from 0 to 10. It'll tell them where they're at, and it'll make some recommendations on how to improve. And then we have a starting point to say, okay, well, if you want to be out of the day to day and you want to improve the value of your business and we want to increase the profit margins and stuff, let's start working on these things. And it kind of gives us a starting point. And that's how I've helped some of my clients with coaching them through, growing their companies and stuff. So,
Ah, very cool that you made a tool like that. I like that it kind of takes complex things and it sounds like it synthesizes it into an easier to understand way.
yes. Yep.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. Hey man, so just as we wrap up here, a few things I want to summarize on. So I would say one of my big takeaways, I would say easy one is know your numbers. I think you've been really good about knowing your numbers, being aggressive in terms of not being afraid to change the industry you're in
Yep.
and test things and look at an adequate amount of data before you make changes. So I'd say that's one big takeaway for me. Another big takeaway, although we didn't get too deep into it, was making sure that you systemize your business.
Yes.
I think that's one thing that tends to get glossed over a lot. Would you say anything else come to mind to you for as far as a takeaway that the audience might be able to take and apply to their own businesses?
Yes, I mean systematizing. I mean, we could just hit on that. Just brought it up. I mean, that's already something I'm doing for the roofing business. I didn't even start the business yet, but I already started putting together systems. Like I have an executive assistant that helps me with some of the stuff that I do, and I'm constantly putting systems in place so I can hand things off. Right. So you got to start doing that at any stage of the game you're at. But I believe that's something you got to start working on right away, and it's not hard to do. You just evaluate your time and you start handing off the things that you hate doing the most. And it changed my life when I learned about that, and it made running a business a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. And then I think number three, I might end on, although this was a very small part of the show, is family businesses are tough.
Yep.
And I'd say understand that they're tough. Just like business, there's ups and downs. And I think the best job you can do to try to keep relationships aligned in a family business, I think I see those relationships last longer. I think when there's a lack of clear leadership or what the hierarchy is,
Yes.
I feel like a lot of times is where you see just it's chaos.
Yes.
Anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that was the issue. There was, it was my father's business and I was
Yeah.
working for him and I started the division. So that's kind of where it became an issue because it wasn't like I was an employee, but like, it wasn't like I just went there and he gave me a job. It wasn't like, oh, go do sales for my business. He's like, here's a yellow pad and a desk and a pen and a phone. See what you could do with it. That's literally what he told me. And I started, this division that morphed into this big business or decent sized business. And I think that's what made it tough because it felt like my business, but it wasn't. It was still my father's business at the end of the day. And, I was a young kid. So it was hard. It was definitely hard.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, Teddy. So these are your websites. You've got a LinkedIn profile at Teddy Slack. That's where you do, I believe, a lot of
Yep.
interaction there. People can reach out to you. You've got you've got Instagram is now Teddy underscore Slack. And then of course you have BizScore dot AI, BIZ score dot AI.
Yep.
Anything I left out or anything else you want to talk about?
No, just the YouTube channel, which
Oh yeah.
that's at Teddy Slack as well. There's some content out there, and like I said, I'll be hopefully putting together a documentary on bootstrapping this roofing business and putting out some good content on there.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that. In fact, on the note of your YouTube, That's how I actually initially learned about you and we connected. Your YouTube videos are awesome, dude. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
you're a great presenter, very thorough. You talk about numbers. One other thing as I wrap up here, are there any books for you that stand out? Because you mentioned reading a lot of books. Any that maybe the audience would enjoy checking out and being sure they should be on their reading list?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on, what topics you want to cover. I mean, for numbers, Simple Numbers by Greg
Yeah, good one.
Crabtree. Yeah, I like that book. It simplified a lot of things for me, understanding of your numbers in your business. And Built to Sell by John Warlow is a very good business as well. Very good book, excuse me, on growing your business for value purposes and how to prepare for a sale. So it's a great book.
Yeah, those are two great books. In fact, John has his own podcast.
Yes.
I'm surprised you haven't. If you haven't been on that, I'd be surprised because you have a great story.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It was
Okay,
nice being on here, Tyler. I appreciate you having me on for sure.
yeah, you're amazing, Teddy. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it too. Take care.
All right, take it easy.
Welcome to Profit and Grit. It's profit and grit, not luck and a wish. From the wrench to the spreadsheet, we're stacking our chips. Slow season hits, man, we tighten the ship. It's the blue collar way we build, not dip.